everybody. How's it going? So my research is at its core about how we as humans understand space and time and how we use technology to explore the world around us. In other words, it's about maps. Through the course of my research, I began to chart a history of navigation. I spoke with researchers, flipped through maps at the New York Public Library, and dug deep into the science of orientation. Speaking of the science, orienting ourselves in the world is intrinsically tied to how we remember. This mental map by a young student shows how places evoke emotions and memories. In fact, spatial navigation and memory are two sides of the same coin. They are both encoded by the hippocampus in the same way. The brain treats all these data points as a collection of relationships, whether it be knowing a friend's name or knowing how to get home. I interviewed Dr. Ethan Solomon, who researches cognition. As he says, when I think about memory, I think about associations. To me, memory is just a network of associations that your brain has with everything you experience. To find representations of this network of associations, I turned to urban theorists like Kevin Lynch. He saw mental maps in 5 general elements: paths, edges, districts, nodes, and landmarks. Between Lynch's theory and reviewing childhood psychology research like the paper illustrated here, I posit my own definition of mental maps. That we know routes between landmarks, and with experience, we develop robust survey knowledge that is greater than the sum of its parts. Mental maps are useful, but by codifying them with paper and ink or through digital coordinates, we're able to get closer and closer to ground truth, what is known and true on Earth. But that skill, our mental maps, are atrophying. With GPS in our phones, we've outsourced our ability to orient. We follow a blue dot on a screen instead of engaging our brain's own navigation system. In turn, we are being shaped by the very devices meant to guide us. Our new navigational technology is fostering new exploration of the world and creating new anxieties about our safety. Using my research, I will chart a history of navigation through 3 mediums: ships, planes, and satellites. Each new era expanded our understanding of the world and brought us more in tune with its dangers. Starting with ships. Before the blue dot, navigators oriented with paper maps and stars. In the 1st century CE, Greco-Roman geographer Claudius Ptolemy introduced the cartographic grid. With his invention, any position on Earth's sphere could be abstracted into 2 points: its longitude and its latitude. This placed the specific map in your hands as a puzzle piece in the greater network of maps and images that represent our global world. Ptolemy's work was overlooked for centuries. Mapmakers prioritized the stories that maps could tell rather than their accuracy. They were diagrams rather than true models. But in the 15th century, with a renewed interest in accuracy, famous cartographers like Mercator, you might know his projection, created maps that were homages to Ptolemy, using his math. This one is at the New York Public Library, and it's very beautiful. I like the little angels. But while maps were improving, following them was difficult. Longitude could not be calculated at sea until 1737, when John Harrison invented a clock powerful enough to stand up to the seas. With his chronometer, navigating the oceans became safer and more accurate. This rapid growth of navigation in between the mid-16th and mid-19th centuries became known as the Age of Sail. The popularity of the British charts created with the chronometer enabled the British to argue in the International Meridian Conference in 1884 that the prime meridian, the origin of latitude that we still use today, should run directly through Greenwich, England. During this time, on land, there was an obsession with the seas. The phrase "at sea" originally meant to be out of contact with a ship, hoping for its return, as seen in this Defoe quote from Robinson Crusoe. Gradually, language shifted. Hutchinson here is still referring to navigation, but is using "at sea" to be lost at sea. Finally, Bram Stoker in 1902 used "all at sea" in a philosophical sense, in a discussion between 2 characters with the protagonist unsettled. All at sea no longer simply meant out of contact. It meant to be lost and disoriented. The next major shift in navigational technology that I researched was aviation. When we took to the skies, it forced new perspectives of a world once seen only on the ground. Our gaze moved above the horizon to thousands of feet in the air. New landscapes were revealed, and the danger of remote journeys was mollified. The New York Public Library provided me with scans of Richard E. Harrison's 1944 atlas, Look at the World. This work captured the shift into the air. His atlas illustrates the plane's view of our planet, with perspective drawings showing the Earth's gentle curvature and protruding mountain ranges, as well as World War II battle lines and supply routes, showing how new forms of navigation often emerge in tandem with military action. The world had shifted beneath the ashwood wings of the Wright brothers' airplanes, and as early as World War I, radio towers allowed planes to tune to a station and determine their heading, the way they were going, through a directional antenna. By World War II, pressurized cabins raised altitudes higher, and Rosie the Riveter's metal hulls allowed for longer flights. Exploration exploded with flight. In the interwar period, Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic, and Major General Mason Patrick led the first aerial circumnavigation of the world. But new technology brought new danger. Amelia Earhart disappeared in 1937 amid her own flight around the world. Researchers believe her inexperience with the experimental radio antenna seen here to be a factor in her disappearance. But many embraced the risk of early flight. I flipped through Jeanette Mirsky's life at the Bernard Archives. She wrote a 1934 book on Arctic exploration and navigated the world as a solo female traveler far before it was cool and far before Google Translate. Flying had its own impact on language as well. In 2020, Kobe Bryant died in a death spiral in a helicopter crash. Spatial disorientation in the air led to this term, which just refers to the descending spin that can occur when a pilot's inner ears lie to them about the position of their aircraft. The term has made its way into fields as disparate as figure skating and health insurance. Even the term situational awareness originated in World War I aviation and became popularized into general language by fighters returning from Korea and Vietnam. It is now frequently used outside the context of aviation. Finally, today, we are in the midst of another global perspective shift. We have abstracted ourselves from the land and into outer space, as we are guided by satellites orbiting 12,000 miles above ground level. This is GPS. It's a network of satellites. It's in communication with receivers on the ground. Satellites beam out radio signals, which is relaying the precise time to all receivers. Now, those receivers are often mobile phones, but the first satellites launched in 1978, and consumer technology became available in the mid-90s. In another interview, I spoke with a pilot, who happens to be my dad, who described his first GPS device, which is a Garmin Pilot 3. And as he said, when you look at it now, it's almost unbelievably simplistic. But whatever the receiver may be, it is comparing time codes received from 4 different signals from 4 different satellites. Then it uses Euclidean geometry to triangulate its position to a precise spot on the globe. GPS is now used in trucking, farming, shipping, aviation, and to direct the International Space Station. But on top of spatial applications, there are also temporal ones. The highly precise atomic clocks on GPS satellites also timestamp our financial transactions, synchronize Hollywood cameras, and track blackouts in our energy grid. GPS was originally developed by the U.S. military's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency and is now operated by the U.S. Space Force. They liken GPS satellites to astronomical lighthouses, beaming time, not light, to cell phones in our pockets instead of ships at sea. With these modern lighthouses, our ability to navigate the world has moved from unfolding a 2-dimensional paper map to locating ourselves on a 3-dimensional globe, and now into the 4th dimension of time, with each level increasing in precision. But with new technology comes new anxieties. A new digital disorientation has taken hold. We do not have our own maps. We've outsourced our survey knowledge to multinational tech companies, those who provide the map and whisper in our ears when to turn. Apps like Google Maps promise effortless navigation, but at a cost. We no longer rely on stars or wave patterns or our own mental maps. We just need a signal. And we're receiving a lot of signals, from food delivery apps to run trackers to pinging lost AirPods. I was actually tracking one of my friends as she was coming in late to make sure she got here on time, which did nothing to help her get here on time. I just was doing it. But GPS technology is behind much of our modern life. An estimated 1.8 billion people use Google Maps every month. This also leads to new exploration, like a Strava map wedding proposals or portraits, and new confidence on traveling remote trails with AllTrails. With an ever-updating, ever more precise map, we also encounter new challenges. Google Maps is treating President Trump's declaration on the Gulf of America differently based on location, reflecting the uneasy relationship as a global company subject to the American authority that owns the technology behind its maps. But ultimately, navigation and exploration are inherently human. We are always pushing the limits of our world. Our old friend, longitude, is now known everywhere on the globe to the nearest centimeter. Today, GPS gives us new autonomy over the world. Some feel more secure and explore broader. Others become anxious, disoriented, and lost in the signals. Thank you.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.